sometimes you have to separate. You just have to know the kind of person that you are. Can you separate earning a living from what you're most passionate about? And then for whatever you're most passionate about, just lean into that, whatever that looks like. Find an outlet for it, but it doesn't have to be the way that you make money if that keeps your stress levels down. For me, it does. That's not to say I'm not passionate about the work that we do, but I also have some other things that I don't want to make money from because they're sacred. They don't need to be touched.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Embracing Only podcast. I am so thrilled and excited to introduce Kim Crowder. She's the founder and CEO of Courageous Crowd. She's a transformational leadership development expert who has helped Fortune 500 organizations turn crisis into competitive advantages. And if there's ever a time for a new minted crisis every morning or every minute, it's today. So folks, go find Kim and bring her in. Kim and her team have delivered measurable results, including $117 million in cost savings for an $811 million healthcare organization, 150% ROI with sustained impact at major universities, and aligned 3,300 plus employees during organizational crisis. Like, Kim, you're coming in with receipts, like out the wazoo. It's unbelievable. From Adobe to SmugMug, HarperCollins, publishers, to the American Library Association, Kim and her team battle-tested methodologies and help executives build resilient, high-performing teams during complex change. Kim is certified in Six Sigma, Lean Sigma, and her team deliver comprehensive solutions. And Kim has been recognized by Forbes as a top educator companies need now. She serves on the MIT Technology Review Global Panel and Harvard Business Review Advisory Council. And folks, if you're not following her on LinkedIn, you should. 100,000%. She's a LinkedIn top voice with 86,000 plus followers and counting. She's been featured by the New York Times, CBS, NBC, Business Insider, and regularly by Forbes. Kim, we are so very excited to have you here in the midst of everything that is brewing. Thank you for making time to be on the Embracing Only.
Yeah, thank you. It's always awkward to have to sit through your own bio. I'm like, how did celebrities do it all? It's so weird. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate you reading that long bio, and I'm excited to talk to y'all today.
Gosh, but I mean, it's a bio. I would read it 10 times over because the impact you've had is unbelievable. And I'm going to kick off with one quick question, because in a lot of these spaces, Kim, you have been the first, the only. And a lot of times for the first and the only, boundaries often feel really risky. So what are some ways in which you might recommend our audience, especially in the midst of the multiple crises, either that they're in or they're reading about, how do they navigate boundaries to protect their capacity without jeopardizing their influence?
This looks differently depending on where I sit. So I'll explain why I say that. So inside corporate America, my experiences are very different than outside of corporate America as a trusted advisor, as a strategic consultant, because how that operates is people have paid money for my opinion, my team's opinion, for our expertise. And so the expectation is that we come in a certain way. We come in as expert level. We come in direct and honest. On the flip side, inside of corporate America, that's very different. And it's for many reasons, right? Oftentimes there's these deep unspoken rules that happen in corporate America where nobody tells you what those rules are, but you sort of have to figure them out. And when you cross one is when you learn that rule is like the boundary you don't cross. I cannot tell you that I am an expert at telling particularly women of color how to navigate inside. That's the reason I'm not inside anymore. It's the reason why I'm a consultant. Because what I find is that our clients are really open to hearing feedback. And that's what's exceptionally exciting about being a consultant. Now, that's not everyone across the board, right? Of course, we do have clients who do a really great job of already creating an environment like that, but we don't also come in and support clients who want to create environments understanding that culture equals revenue. Culture is directly tied to your bottom line, particularly your leadership culture within your organization from executive on throughout those frontline. So when you ask me boundaries, I can talk about boundaries as a consultant. Some of that comes from, I think the first part of that is just understanding what you bring to the table. and owning that, being unafraid to own that. And the way that I do that is I remind myself of the very numbers that you read. What was the impact? What impacts have I already had? What have I lived through? And one of the sort of words that you use when you were introducing me is we talk about battle-tested methodology. And what battle-tested means is that why I love academia, and I think it's very important, it's an expanded part of what's needed for work environments. Oftentimes research, and I'm just going to step on my soapbox 2 minutes and step off, because oftentimes research from academia is behind closed doors in the way of you have to pay in order to read. You don't always get access because a lot of that research is kept internally. The reason I talk about battle tested is because I've lived through what we are helping support organizations implement and then seeing the success of that. And no one has lived through more mostly than women in workplaces, especially women of color in workplaces, especially a woman of color who sat at the end of the executive seat. Not only do I understand the challenges of executives, but I also lived on the outskirts in the way where I can see things that are the root causes and not just the symptoms of what's happening, right? So usually what happens is when we work with clients, they come to us with the symptoms. And because of that, light bulbs come on and I can start digging into the root cause because of being on that outskirt as part of being at every level of employment, but especially as an executive and being a Black woman as an executive. And so when you talk about holding boundaries, really for me, it's holding value. And that I want to make sure I say that did not come easily. That did not come immediately. That is over time. That is deciding what my boundaries were over time. Sometimes you didn't even know it was a boundary until somebody hit it because it wasn't a boundary 6 months ago, but now it's a boundary because you really understand what the value is that you bring to the organization. Of course, you always have get you a good lawyer, have an ironclad contract. That's important. And also be very clear up front because the more that you build respect immediately, the more people value you in the process of whatever that is. And the ability to hold respect and also be gracious and kind and be willing to walk away when those lines are crossed, that's your power. And so that's how we operate. And because of that, we have insights into conversations that we wouldn't necessarily have. And we're able to create the outcomes that you read so graciously at the top of the bio.
Oh, so many gems. Thank you for also sharing something that's so important because something I've had to reflect on. I just left corporate 2.5 years ago and after 18 years. And there is such a significant difference between understanding how you may or may not hold boundaries in corporate within the unwritten rules that exist. And then just suddenly finding that, wow, I can set my boundaries and I'm respected when I step out of it completely, which is a complete mind meld. Honestly, in a lot of cases, it's people who would just expect you to kind of blur the lines of your boundaries. And so it's important for folks listening who are still in corporate that it can look different and almost that's okay. But also within that space that you're in, which is corporate, to what extent can you actually hold boundaries that serve you well in what you are trying to achieve and build there still?
Yeah. And being clear on your values is what gets you there. What are my values, no matter where you are sitting, inside corporate, outside corporate, yes. But taking the time to stop and think about that instead of adopting whatever is giving to you is really powerful.
Yes. I think that's so important, Kim. And I'm glad I was waiting to jump in here between you and Archita, because I think, especially right now, depending on where you sit, there are a lot of corporations that are doing an about face on values that they said were important to them as a company, right? And I think for Black and brown women, sometimes, especially when you're sitting in these executive seats, especially if you have lived values that are playing out in your workplace, now you're seeing the workplace say, nope, we're just not going to do that anymore. This is not important to us. We're going to put that to the side. So as we're talking about boundaries, you made such an important statement, which is the willingness to walk away, right? That willingness to walk away, whether in corporate or in the consulting space, I think is very important. So with that note, I want to pivot us back just a second. So we're going to go back a couple years in your journey before you created Courageous Crowd. And you were sitting in those executive seats and maybe on the outskirts watching some craziness go down. And you had this moment that you talked about on LinkedIn where your health was starting to suffer because the experience that you were having was not great, even though your team was thriving. And it kind of the catalyst for you to say, you know what? It's time to shift and do my own thing. Can you tell us a little bit about what that period of time was like and what really happened that created the pivot for you?
Well, let me just say this. Courageous Crowd existed while I was still in a work environment, because I think that's important. I had a side hustle. So I think that's important. Part of the conversation is because I was serving clients while still in a work environment. And so I brought some of that over, right? I could see some things in organizations and I had an outlet to be impactful in ways that maybe I just didn't have when I was inside of the corporate environment. Also, something else that you mentioned was, what was the turning point? The turning point was, so I was at that organization almost 4 years. The turning point was being laid off at the next job. So I just want to say that becoming an entrepreneur wasn't something that I 100% had a timeline on. It is it happened by circumstance. Am I glad about the change? Yes, but in that moment, not necessarily. I didn't know what I was going to do. The benefit of that is, one, I got to take some time off and really evaluate what was important to me. What did I want in life in general? What was my next step? And I got to take a step back and do that. But also I got to free think a little bit on social media, right? So I was building stuff in the background. I was free thinking on social media. And that's how we started attracting people whose values were the same as ours. I'm thinking about a particular client who's one of our favorites, and I won't say who because we don't want people to feel away, but one of our favorite clients came in and said, we so connected with what we saw on LinkedIn. And by the time they got to us, it wasn't this buy-in, will you work with us? It was, we were there. We were already aligned. And because of that, we were able to get the results that we got with that client. So when you ask the question about what the turning point was, I cannot fairly say, oh, this was premeditated. Oh, I guess I had a version of that. I knew that that was happening, that I wanted some level of entrepreneurship. Every job I'd had, I never had training. I always walked in and built something and came in as a change catalyst. Often it can be challenging inside of a work environment, right? You're the person that's always rocking the boat, but it's really beautiful on the outside as a consultant because you're not necessarily bound and tied to those same rules that I was tied to internally. But this is why when we serve clients, I can see what might be the pitfalls, right? I can see where clients may get in their way because I experienced it. And I'm able to come back and say, okay, this looks a lot like what I was experiencing inside. And maybe I should call your attention to it in the most gentle, in the most gentle and sometimes really direct ways in order to move an organization forward. And so I cannot say that there was a turning point. I can just tell you that I attracted the work without meaning to attract the work. I showed up as myself, and that is what people connected with. And on top of that, started to build a team based on the very principles that I had put out into the world, because people started to come and say, hey, I love what you do. Would you ever need this? Or when team members come to us, you do an interview for a team member, they can go out in the world and find out all kind of information about you. So it's really a benefit in some way to have that as a rock. But the reason it works is because I was authentic up front. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. And actually, the fact that it was kind of a forced exit, I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing that, Megan. I hadn't realized that. Really hammers home the point that Archita and I have been trying to make to our audience is don't allow yourself to be a victim. You better have a side hustle because these companies aren't loyal, right? Yeah. So it may be good today. And if it is, God bless, you're one of the lucky ones. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be good tomorrow. And so I love that you had already started to create what maybe had started as a creative outlet for you, but it gave you the opportunity to not completely panic, because you at least had something running in the background where you didn't end up flat on your face and a victim of circumstance, where a lot of our sisters unfortunately end up as a failure to kind of work on something of their own on the back end. Right. So if anyone's listening, I think the key takeaway from what Kim just said there is what Archita and I have been saying to you ladies: do not leave yourself open to becoming a victim. Build something of your own, even if it's something small. Start small, figure it out. You never know when that might become your lifeline. The other question that I want to lead into, and I'll let Archita jump in here, is you talked a lot a second ago about alignment. Right. And alignment can be such an elusive topic for ladies. I think when you haven't quite lived it yet, you're maybe not attracting the jobs that you want yet. You're still trying to figure out, who am I? What are my values? What is it that I want? Which is kind of that foundation of getting alignment, is figuring out you. What guidance would you give to women that know that they want more, that know that they're capable of more, but haven't maybe started the work to say, what's important to me? How do I show up authentically? What's your advice to start with the alignment?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I often do is two things. One, the rat race that is in corporate America can create the incapability of the necessary quiet that is needed to be creative. And so a lot of your creativity is used in the work environment, and you come home and you're exhausted. What I love about being a consultant and thinking about how we serve our clients is that we have a lot more space to be creative. We have the ability to be strategic and creative as part of our business strategy, as part of the way that we work with clients. And it's also putting team members in positions where they actually love the work. So I'm not forcing anyone on my team to be or do anything that they don't enjoy. You don't always get to choose that in corporate America, right? Now, as the business owner, I still got to do some of the challenging things, but you can block them, at least pocket them. And this is what I'm really great at. And is there another team member that loves this and that it's really great at this that I can move this over to? And what that does is, for me in particular, I'm very strategic. I'm really good at it. I'm able to sit back and play with strategy and think about the possibilities. When we think about the strengths finders, one of the things that I am is strategic. So I've asked a lot of what ifs. Okay, if we do this, then what if this happens? If we do this, then what if this happens? I'm curious. That is another benefit as a consultant when we serve our clients, is to be curious, because we can peek behind the window and say, I heard what you said, and I see that around the corner. Right? I heard what you feel like you may be experiencing, and that is still two-dimensional. But let's open up so that we're 3D on this and get down to what could be the biggest concerns and the biggest challenges that can make the largest impact, or quick wins, or however we decide that looks. And so for people who are looking for alignment, I would say, even if you can find 5 minutes of quiet, journaling is great. Writing down those ideas. Oftentimes I'll have an idea for a framework that we don't use for 2 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, you put something down on paper and you may think about it in pieces and chunks, and then all of a sudden a client shows up and you're like, that's why I was solving that before this happened, and now I can implement it. That's why I was doodling around with thinking about XYZ, and now we've been able to move that forward. And I particularly remember talking to a client where they were having a whole bunch of issues on the manufacturing floor. But I had already, for whatever reason, I don't know, started building something to help with executives be able to communicate their vision on a manufacturing floor. And then they came and I was like, oh, we've been solving for this, but I didn't know I was solving for that. I didn't have a name for it. And so the more that you can get in touch with those whispers that you get here and there, just write them down. They don't have to mean anything, but put them somewhere you can go back to and review them. That's a big way to align, is just that silence. The second thing I would say is remind yourself of how great you are at what you do, whatever that is. remind yourself over and over, because that helps you align with realizing what my skill sets are, what blanks would I need to fill in, what do I actually enjoy, deciding what that is. And then the third thing I would say is being okay with not having every bit of your passion or the excavating of your soul or those things that are held deepest. Be okay with that not being the work that you do day by day. And I know people are like, ooh, that's so opposite. But sometimes you can't live in that place and then make money from it and stay whole about it, right? Sometimes you have to separate. You just have to know the kind of person that you are. Can you separate earning a living from what you're most passionate about? And then for whatever you're most passionate about, just lean into that, whatever that looks like. Find an outlet for it, but it doesn't have to be the way that you make money if that keeps your stress levels down. For me, it does. That's not to say I'm not passionate about the work that we do, but I also have some other things that I don't want to make money from because they're sacred. They don't need to be touched. And so those are the three things I would say is find space for quiet, write down those little whispers that come to you, and then also decide if what you're passionate about has to be the thing that makes you money.
That last one hit hard, Ken.
Because it's the opposite of what people tell you, right? And I found that actually, again, I love what I do. I'm deeply passionate about it. But is it the deepest passion of myself where I'm having to excavate my soul over and over? No. But do I love it because I get to be creative? I'm in my zone of genius all the time because we get to watch clients have beautiful outcomes, the same outcomes that you just talked about. And that's globally. Yes. And so we just get to decide where our fulfillment is and what that looks like. And again, it doesn't always have to be tied to money. I remember Quinta Brunson, and I'm going to just say this last thing, she has Abbott Elementary. And she said that she was talking to a producer, some executive, and she started telling them I think it was a story about her mother. And they were like, well, that's your next show about your mother. Or it was just about something painful. She said, no, I'm not excavating my soul in order to make money. It doesn't have to be that. I can do what I love and still keep a piece of myself. And it was like a light bulb went off for me. It gave me permission to understand that you can be really great at something and be really good at it and have fun and be in your zone of genius, but it doesn't have to excavate your soul. And capitalism has told us that it does. And so I actually want to release people from this idea that capitalism has to be connected to the deepest part of your humanity, because it doesn't.
Gosh, I'm like writing a bunch of notes, but I'm like, I don't know where to start right now because it's just, I've got to really sit. I really have got to sit with this last thing that Olivia just said, right? Because on Embracing Only, we talk a lot about find what you're passionate about and then go follow that. But it's so interesting that you brought this up. And I'm telling you, there's a reason why we ended up having this chat today versus last week or whenever we were supposed to have a chat, because literally today I was thinking, how cool is it that I get to do, Olivia, this is crazy. I was like, because we don't do Embracing Only to make a living. We do it because at the moment, right? But having fun, we enjoy talking to all these amazing humans and share their voices with the world. But we both are like right in that space where we've got to make some money with this. What the heck? But I was just thinking today, Olivia, I was like, hey, you know what? I really love this stuff that we do here. And I, of course, love what I do with my clients. It's private equity. I work with private equity. I help them with their go-to-market strategy or whatever it is. And I enjoy it, but I'm just like, it's so weird. Like I don't have language for it and you've given it to me, but I'm not yet ready to embrace it. Like I had this kind of wave in my head where I was like, I get to do this because I get to be creative. That's literally what I was thinking today. I was like, I get to be like boundlessly creative. So Lovable, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a vibe coding software. Okay, so no code software where you using AI that you can make chat bots and all this other stuff. And this weekend they made it free for everybody in the world, like unlimited credits. Okay, so I geeked out. Like I had a very busy weekend, Saturday, Sunday, shuttling my 3 kids through 800 birthday parties and other nonsense. But at 8:30 p.m., I was like, I have 4.5 or whatever it was, 4.5 hours. What can I create for my business? So I created 4 products. It was crazy, right? And so that's what's interesting is that you're saying you've shaken something inside of me and I'm going to have to journal and write this down. But this idea about passion does not need to equate to I need to find a way to make money, because if it excavates your soul in so many different ways, or if it makes you, because it does sometimes to me, because there's work that, Olivia, I'd want to do. And people are like, well, Harshita, go follow that. Go do that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to make money from that.
Yeah.
I want to make money from this, because it's also strategic. This is where money is right now. So why would you not do that? That would be silly. So sorry, I went on a total crazy ride on my own there, but it was so fascinating, and I'm going to have to unpack that. But one thing I really want to iterate, which you said, was to folks who are still in the corporate ecosystem, I don't think we're ever here on the show to say leave corporate, because I think that would be stupid. That would be really ridiculous to do. Just as you did, Kim, you did it strategically. You were building something while you were still in your job. And sure, circumstances then kickstarted it to move further, but you were already building something. But what you said about murmurs, you can carve out 5 minutes to listen to things in yourself. And just, if it's a notes app or your journal or whatever it is, write it down. Don't feel the need to chase how to solve for it today.
Right.
Or the next month or the next year. Because the beauty of letting this go into the universe is that it does come back in the right way that you need to receive it. But if you don't capture it, you've lost it.
Verbal notes are also, somebody gave me that idea years ago, and I was like, why didn't I ever think about that? Especially now that we have transcription apps.
Yes.
It's so easy to just do that verbally, because sometimes you just don't have the time. Or sometimes I'd sing into a notes app just so I don't forget something. Because I'm a musician as well, if you listen to how musicians create, that's how they create. Oh, I was in the grocery store, I heard the rhythm, but I could only hear a piece of the rhythm. So I thought it was this. And then when I walked down that aisle, I realized it was that song. And I've literally heard musicians do this, and I've had this happen. But you can take that rhythm you heard first, because that's the one that resonated with you first. And so I just need to get it out of me, put it somewhere. Sometimes you find a note you wrote yourself 2 years later, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I was thinking about this. I've had that happen before. I've listened to something I did, and I'm like, oh, I love that. But what if I added this to it? And so that is when you think about, again, solving in your industry, whatever you do, serving your clients, whatever you do for yourself, however that is, find those whispers, put them somewhere, get them outside of yourself. And then, as you mentioned, it could be years down the road. It could be 60 years old that it may mean something different than it did in that moment that you can take with you. Or you might be building for something you had no idea was coming. Just hope that people value what comes to them. They're valuable. They're a part of the way that you operate in the world. And so we are not always taught that those little things mean something. And so the more we can value those little things, those whispers, when we see it finally come together, that's when you go, okay, I had the capacity to build XYZ. I had the capacity as a business owner to serve clients in ways that I had thought that I could never work like this with clients. And then now you're in a position to go, actually, I'm the best person for it, because I've been piecing together all of this for the last 6 months or however long. And now I can actually bring it into fruition because I have a foundation that I can move from. It's just knowing how you work, how you operate, but honoring that instead of working against it, which we often do. Oh, that's not a big deal. That's nothing. It doesn't matter. The more that we can honor our systems for how we unlock our brilliance, the more that we can get to a place where we decide what part of that we want to put into make money bucket or keep for ourselves bucket.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Cream. If you are a corporate girly and you are struggling, you're feeling stuck, maybe you're feeling underpaid, overqualified, you're struggling with your boss, or bigger yet, you're even trying to clearly articulate what it is that you want from your corporate career, I am the coach for you. So if you're ambitious and you've got goals to accomplish and you want to accomplish them quickly, check out my website, oliviacream.com. I would love to help you reach your goals.
Hi, everybody. I'm Archita Fritz, your other host of the Embracing Only podcast. If you're ready to leave corporate, or you've changed a couple of corporate jobs and want to start a profitable side brilliance, you've made the decision, but you feel unsure of the next steps, here's how I can help you. I can guide you through a successful transition to entrepreneurship to help turn those ideas into profit. So reach out to me on LinkedIn or visit me on architafritz.com to accelerate your empowered transitions. Now, back to the episode.
I did not plan for this conversation to go down this path, and I can't tell you how happy I am because much like Archita, like I can't take notes because I'll lose focus on the conversation, but I'm going to come back and re-listen to this to sit with this because both of you ladies are so right. I mean, the audience at this point knows I've pivoted to entrepreneurship myself, even though I had kind of my side hustle running for about 2 years, but I full-time went into it in April. And it's interesting because as I've been going back over my notes, I have this 369 journal, right, where I kind of write down my focuses and I intentionally try to avoid my engineering brain and thinking linearly. And I just put whatever down that comes to me, right? Like it's in there. Sometimes it wouldn't make any sense to anyone but me. If you opened it, you'd be like, Olivia has lost her mind because it is just like, I'm just dumping things into this. And this was like 6 years in the making.
Yeah.
6 years, how I'm functioning now in the making. So I think you absolutely have a point. And, you know, some of the ladies that we talk to, I hear them often say that when they get a moment of quiet, they're so overwhelmed by corporate that their brain just races. Like it's quiet, but they're not quiet. You know what I mean? Like they haven't found the stillness for those whispers to even rise to the top yet. And I would say to those ladies, if you're sitting in that place, and Kim, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you would say to those ladies, but if your brain won't give you quiet, it's time to lean into some healing, right? You've got to find that peace because if your brain is noisy because you're so focused on the chaos that's happening in these corporate spaces, that newsflash, ladies, and we already know this, we do not control, right? We're just along for the ride. If you have let that consume you so deeply, there's some healing that needs to happen before you can even start with what we're talking about here, because you got to find the quiet.
It's interesting that you say that for two reasons. What I didn't realize is that the way that we have 3 areas of focus because we believe that these 3 areas are how you move leadership forward long term, right? Sometimes people come in and do workshops, which are great. And we did versions of that. But when we really saw pivotal change is when we showed up with people, processes, and communications as that is our foundational way that we serve leaders, period. And we see the ability for them to translate what we taught them and move that through the organization. So that 150% return on investment for a department at an $8 billion university, they were able to take what they learned in 6 hours, share that with 100 plus other leaders across the university, across departments, and then 2 years later won a national award based on what they learned during our workshop. Here's why I'm telling that story the way I am. Is because I learned how to speak that language in the craziness of corporate America. There's no other way I could have spoken that language to them. Yes. There's no other way I could have built that level of strategic conversation in ways that they could grasp and then translate. And I didn't know I was doing it at the time. I thought I was just giving them a workshop. And then I started to see the ripple effects, which is why it's so great to go back to a client and find out how they're doing. That's just an aside. If you're consultant, just an aside. But to measure the return on investment, to measure their success, and it's been over 2 years, so they're closer to 3 years out, and they still have those values. They are still implementing those within the organization. They're still onboarding people with those same values. They changed their guidelines around that. They changed their workflows and processes based on that. And so I couldn't have learned that outside of corporate America. The truth of the matter is that noise later on turned into becoming a superpower. I don't know how to get around that, but here's what I will say. If you, in the quiet, your mind is racing and running, journal. Because you can take that noise and distract yourself by doing something else. it's a great way to, at least for a time period, quiet your mind or at least focus your mind. The goal is the focus. And so learning how to focus your mind in those times of rapid conversation or noise in the background is helpful. And whatever you're thinking, you never know if you write down all of that chaos could later on become the foundation of what you can build on your own. And so sometimes we just can't do anything with where life puts us, but we don't know how that is leading to this other thing. And I really feel like had I not lived in that work environment, what you talked about on LinkedIn, where I had acne all the way through here and where I was in and out of the hospital, unfortunately, that experience and all the other ones before that did teach me how to navigate, how to communicate to our partners right now, how to immediately be able to see root cause issues amongst all the craziness. They're telling me all the stuff is happening. They come on, they sort of like word vomit when we ask all the questions. And then I can take that and just rummage through it and go, oh, that's the problem. Oh, that's really the problem. Oh, that's really the issue. And I can quiet them because I learned how to go, all of that other stuff is just extra. Here's the main issue, right? I've learned to become the voice of reason. I gave myself chills, so I may have to keep that somewhere.
Give me chills.
I was like, yeah. You did quiet, just hire Kim because it sounds like
So those are the things that can lead to X, Y, Z. So I would say for now, just notate it. Notate all of that madness because later on, it could very well be the thing that creates the superpower that allows you to see through all of the other stuff and get down to the root. So that's what you can focus on instead of the madness. So that's what I would say is don't fight it. Decide what you can do with it. And then you'll get better at quieting your mind because you're practicing a way to combat it. Don't see it as a hindrance. Don't do that to yourself. This is where you are. Honor that this is where I am in the journey and this is what I need to do in order to create whatever I need to create that may happen later on down the road. And I promise you, it will be your strength at some point.
Yes. And I really hope people are double clicking on just what you said, Kim, is you don't need to action on it in the moment.
Right.
Because we're super wired in corporate to exceed expectations, especially as a woman of color, the only whatever intersection you're at, right? That's the minimum requirement is exceed expectations. And so because of that, we feel action is so critical on whatever assignment that has been given or an assignment we give ourselves. I know this because I feel it. When you said this, I could feel that sense of urgency I'd always feel in corporate. I need to find a way to prove that I'm worthy of, or like I'm worthy for, or I'm worthy because, whatever the hell it is. And so you overperform. Like, we speak about this all the time. We overperform for the love of a freaking garbage 7%, 5% performance raise, right? Like we overperform for senior leaders who will think us ready for that next role, whatever it might be. And I think it's such an important exercise that you're sharing with people. For some people, it's running that quietens their mind. For some, it's like meditation. Like I'm finding, and I've meditated for just being from I'm from India. Like in my culture, we do a lot of this just naturally growing up, but I'd veered away from it for a long time. But very recently, Olivia, I haven't shared this with you, but I like randomly, this is so bad, I'm going to share this on you, but whatever. I like randomly 3 weeks ago, because I had so much noise in my head recently, because I'm in the space of rebuilding things at the moment and like shipping a lot of no's, because I'm like, I don't care. I want to collect as many no's as I can get, because I know I'm going to land on my yes. But when you're in the season, there can be a lot of noise. And I randomly went to YouTube and I Googled like manifestation meditation, okay? Like just totally random. Like usually I would do more research, look at things, whatever. And I have methods that I have learned growing up of how to meditate. But there's something about this thing that I found on YouTube. I go for a walk every morning now. So I cannot recommend this to everybody. Don't freaking check your phone. You will reduce the noise. And I know you hear this everywhere, but ladies, if you can practice this, and I bet you like, if you can do at least, first start for 3 days, because it's going to be hard. 3 days, do not pick up your phone. Do not look at your phone at all. Go for a walk, listen to something, not a podcast or a self-help book or whatever crap like that. Like, not crap because our podcast is amazing, but, just like music that's centering you, or just to listen to the birds chirping or construction work in your part of the city, whatever it is. But go for a walk for the first 1 hour of your morning. Do not touch your phone. Yeah. It is going to naturally quieten your brain, and it's going to reduce your cortisol like next level. I'm not a very good case study right now. I've only done this for 6 days so far. Tomorrow will be day 7. But this random YouTube manifestation thing I played, it's even now thinking about it, I'm transported to the space of like peace. And it's crazy because then when you see this nonsense news cycle, like at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, where you're just like, I'm desperate for some kind of dopamine, even if it's shit dopamine, you go and you look at it and it does not affect you like it would have if you had started your day by getting triggered intentionally by even a WhatsApp message that your mom said, check this out. Usually that triggers the crap out of me. Some fake ass news about something. And I'm like, lady, this country is not behind why this happened in India. But yes, quieten your mind that way. And the first thing is your phone. I just wanted to share that. But sorry, Olivia, I know you've been trying to jump in and Kim, you do.
No, I'm laughing hysterically because I can't agree more about the phone thing. I think maybe my perspective is because I was one of those people I could not get my brain to shut off. And it was very unhealthy for me. I was so consumed in the toxicity of where I was.
Which is fair.
Noise, oh my God, am I going to get criticized for that? Oh my God, am I going to get blamed for this? It's like the noise that was in my head was very, very unhealthy. And Archita, you're right. I can't remember who it was, but it was an executive friend of mine from Stryker, actually. And she said, Olivia, what does your morning routine look like? That's where she was, right? And the first thing was to not look at that phone. And now I do exactly the same thing. I get up, I have my coffee, I go for my walk, I enjoy the seaside, I get back, I maybe do a little yoga, and then I start my day. And you would be surprised, right? Even before I start my day, I do my journaling, right? You'd be surprised how just not looking at it will help you silence some of the unhealthy noise. At least for me, it was very unhealthy noise going on in my head. Like I needed that purge, if you will, where my body was like, okay, we're safe. Like, we're safe for 2 hours in the morning. It's safe. And it was a safety thing for me, for sure. So I know we're coming up on time. And Kim, I wanted to ask you this question as a Black woman leading Courageous Cloud right now. We can't escape the political climate that's hitting all of us in the United States and maybe in other places around the world as well, because we're seeing kind of the rise of some ugliness happening in various different areas. But as a Black female CEO who has these powerful clients, you're working with executives, so you're stepping into their boardrooms and helping them tackle some very sensitive leadership concerns. Can you talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the good and bad experiences that you have and how you approach running your business, knowing that you walk around with the gender and the skin that you're living in today? How do you go about running your business?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question to ask. And I want to go back to something we talked about before. We're talking about that silence at the beginning of the day. And I believe, I just want to lean on that and then come back to what you said. It is a privilege to be able to wake up and not touch your phone. So I want to honor that. I also want to honor what you said, Olivia, about it was like I couldn't shut it off. It was very unhealthy. So I want to honor that some workplaces can have mental health impacts. Mine certainly did. And so it's even privileged to decide if you want to stay in a workplace or not. Like even that is very privileged. It's privileged to say, find a therapist. For all of the things that would naturally help. That's why I recommend journaling, because it's something that at least most of us can do. So I'm just more holding space for the unfortunate commonality of being in a place where you can't shut your mind down. And that's part of the rat race of capitalism. Now, back to what you said about walking into boardrooms, knowing that I'm who I am, there were times when I felt very insecure about that. And I always people talk about imposter syndrome. I have a problem with that. Let me tell you why. It's because oftentimes the ways that we show up in the world is directly related to how the world responds to us. So it's not like we created some environment, because imposter syndrome puts the onus on the people who receive silent messages that you're not enough, you don't get invited to certain rooms, whatever that looks like. And so I want to take the onus off of that and put the onus on the systems themselves that teach us those lies, because they're lies. The way that I navigate it, and that grows on a regular basis, is the more that I operate in a place where I am confident that the work that we're doing, I need data. Give me the research. I have to see some numbers behind it. Give me some clarity around why we're taking this position or why we're focusing in this way. That helps me. So it's finding out what helps you, what builds confidence for you. Finding women who look like you, who run businesses like Judy Smith, for instance, who is the real Olivia Pope. Just seeing her as an example, or listening to podcasts give you the courage that you need. That's why I named the organization Courageous Crowd, because I wanted to make sure that we operated from a place of courage. And the way that I have found to do that is to come from a place of my zone of genius. When I feel locked into my zone of genius, it's not really shit you can tell me. When I feel like I am in a place where we can quantify, here's what we've done and here's the impact that we've done, when I feel comfortable saying, this may not be the right fit client for us, and let me be clear about that and be okay with that, that is where I have found the ability to walk in those rooms and feel comfortable with who I am. I didn't create this skin. I didn't create my gender. I didn't create how I show up in the world. I didn't create that to some degree. And what can I do about that? So what I do is I use that as my superpower. Sometimes people underestimate my team and I because of it. Cool, that's your problem, not mine. Or people really trust us because of it. And I want to make that clear, that I'm able to have conversations with people that other people would never have access to, because people understand the plight of my identity. And because of that, they're willing to be more open, or they don't feel like they have to compete with my identity. There are some upsides. And so I'm okay. I lean into that. I own that. I also really okay when the client and I just don't connect. I remember having that happen, and it was really painful because I watched a woman of color who was very afraid of her supervisor. And I knew that before we started working together, but I didn't listen to it on the inside. I don't know what would have changed or what I could have changed, but it ended up not being the best working experience possible because I didn't listen to that part of it. Now, on the other side of that wisdom, I look for those things. That doesn't mean we won't work with a client, but that could mean that I just have more access to the CEO and I have that information in our back pocket. And so we plan for that, right? Part of having those inklings, part of being able to see those certain things is having lived it. Because I knew it because of an email that she sent and the way she talks in an email. My identity and my experiences allowed for me to be able to see it because of that.
God, yes.
I would have missed it any other way. You said that's what I'm getting at is I take that in and I go, this is my superpower. It really is. This is my superpower. And how do I occupy that space knowing that? How do I expand in that space knowing that? How do I bring my team along? How do I recognize my team and see what they need based on that? And so that, as your question, it is just cultivating that and honoring it as your superpower. And whatever other people's issue with it, it's not that you can always ignore it, but you don't have to internalize it.
throwing a party over
Yes.
here. It's almost like I paid you to go down.
Yes.
We talk about superpowers all the time. I don't believe in the imposter syndrome stuff. For all the things that you said, I just kind of wipe it off the table. But I think you're absolutely right. Our lived experiences prepare us back to the alignment to do the things that we want to do today well, but lean into those lived experiences. You'll see things, you'll feel things, you'll know things because of those experiences that help you on this journey that you are on now. So they really do become superpowers if you choose to see them as such.
And again, people respond in the ways that they do. That is very real.
Yep.
And it is also very painful and triggering. Then you get to a place where you just go, that's their problem and not mine. Does it impact your money? Sometimes yes. And so that's why you get crafty and creative about how you make money and decide what's enough money for you or whatever that is. But as you are saying, it is a superpower. It's a superpower. And I get to activate it anytime I get ready.
I love that. Well, I think we are at a stopping point on that note. Kim, can you tell our audience, but we have lots of folks sitting in the C-suite in our audience. Can you tell them how to find you? How do they get a hold of you? How do they get some of your brilliance into their organization?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is right now we are rebuilding our website. So find me on LinkedIn, Kim Crowder on LinkedIn, follow me. And we have what's called executive conversations once a month. Those are conversations curated just for executives. They are complimentary. And you get to open up, and they're confidential, and share your insights, gain insights from other executives as well, and just sit across from your peers. Find me on LinkedIn, private message me and say, I want to come to an executive conversation. We'll get you that information. And then if you just want to follow along quietly for a little while, you can do that too.
I love it. Highly recommend. Well, Kim, as we're wrapping up here, Archita and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Well, I think we got some beautiful gems out of this episode. I surely have some things to journal about in the morning. So thank you for that. And to our audience, as always, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Until next time.
Thank you, Kim.